time. I've had my bank account negative. I used to overdraft my bank account intentionally.
Yeah.
I've had my cell phone turned off. I've done all things that you don't brag about. So I can relate. I also know that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
All right, guys. Sandy Cerami coming to you. We are live on location today. We are with a guy that I got just massive respect for. We're up in Albany, New York right now. We are at 785 Central Avenue, and that is the home of DePaula Chevrolet, a top 50 Chevrolet dealer in the country. And I'm not going to say all the credit because Tony DePaula, the founder, really is the guy that got this machine rolling. But I am with Paul Lynch, who is the vice president of the dealership, a guy that I've gotten to know over the last 6-7 years or so. And so I'm really excited because I've been looking forward to doing this. You've been texting me for the last couple of days saying, I'm pumped, get up here, let's roll. That is your style. I'm sitting next to the heavyweight championship belt and the heavyweight champion at the same time in the heavyweight championship dealership. So welcome to the six, my man, Mr. Paul Lynch.
Very nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, brother. We've had an interesting relationship over the last 6 or 7 years. We had like a false start when I came up here the first time because Richard King, my man Richard King, saying hello and giving you a shout out, introduced us. And back then, I had a chance to sit down with you and Tony, and the timing wasn't right to get together. And ultimately, we got together like a year and a half later, and it's been a wonderful experience for me, for sure, the last 6 or 7 years. But there's a story behind this entire experience here at DePaula Chevrolet, and it starts with Tony. And continues now with the two of you teaming up here. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the business and got together with Tony in the first place?
Absolutely. How I got together with Tony is I married his daughter, so
it's a good move.
There was no way around it. I mean, I started in the car business right out of college, and that wasn't necessarily my plan. I went to school for criminal justice, got a bachelor's degree, and my plan was to be like a New York State police officer. But I took the NYPD test, I took Border Patrol exam, a lot of local police departments, and then the New York State, and I was on a lot of waiting lists. So I took a job with one of my friends. He interviewed for a car dealership, got a job, and they were actually hiring 8 people at the same time, and him and I were 2 of the 8 that they hired.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't even know if it was for me. I was probably the most uncomfortable out of the 8 when we first started, and out of those 8 people, the other 7 sold cars long before I did, and then I started thinking like, this is not. I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah.
I'm the weakest one, I guess, of everyone. But then, within 6 months, I was the only one left, and then and that was in 2002. I think I was hired in October of 2002, and in 2003, I was the salesman of the year. First full year in the car business.
Right.
So,
but those little voices in your head early on were demons that you had to fight through. The ones telling you couldn't do it.
Absolutely. I was definitely outside of my comfort zone. It was not anything that I've ever done before. I was also a young male that, I like to go out and do
have
things
fun.
that were not productive.
The car business doesn't help in that regard. There's no question. I grew up much the same way. But talk to me a little bit about how you fought through those voices, because that is not easy to do. We lose a lot of people in this business, as you know, on the sales side because they can't get past that.
Yeah, and I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't struggle. I mean, I had a lot of potential, but there was times where I struggled myself, and it was self-induced struggle. Like I said,
great point.
The youth got the best of me, and not being mature got the best of me. But when I was there and I could get in front of somebody, I felt like I was better than anybody.
Right.
Once the confidence was built, and I had some success and productivity, I felt like I could do this better than most. So once you start to get good at something, you want to keep doing it. So
it's amazing what a confidence game it really is, especially in sales. But in any type of environment where you're chasing success, confidence is such a key ingredient. You guys do an exceptional job of grooming and growing salespeople here at the store. How do you instill confidence in your newer salespeople so that they do stick around? Because you guys do an exceptional job of that, as you said.
That's a great question. I think that one thing that we do is we really don't hire much people with experience.
Right.
I mean, we're against the trend there. I sit in 2 different NCM 20 groups, and most people say the opposite of what we do. They
Right.
say that they'll go to lunch and meet with a top-notch salesperson from another dealer, and they'll bring a check for $10, $15, $20, $25,000, and
Right.
they're not leaving they're not leaving the lunch table without recruiting that person. I would rather get someone brand new and teach them the way that we believe. I think there's some things that you can't teach a old dog new tricks sometimes, and sometimes, no disrespect to any of those guys because they've had success and they're still having success, but we want to live in 2020, and we want to take advantage of social media. We want to take advantage of all the progressive
There's a culture to
things.
this place. Like, I can feel it when I walk in. I think about what the place was, 7 years ago or so when I walked in the front door. You've evolved a ton over that period of time in terms of the environment, the culture in the store. I think it's permeated the entire operation, additional acquisitions in terms of other franchises that you have. I know a lot of it is deeply rooted in Tony's start over here. By the way, how did Tony get started? I'm curious.
Tony got started, that's a long story, but he took over a store that I believe he was a general manager of, and this was back in let's say right around 1980.
Okay.
I believe he took over the DePaula store in 1980. So
Okay.
they originally were in Schenectady, and it was a small Chevy store, and then it got moved over here, I believe, in 1985.
Okay.
But he was hand-selected by General Motors.
No shortage
he
of
was a
confidence
hot
with
shot.
Tony, correct?
Yeah, hot shot, and what's that? And then they wanted him, and he made it happen for him. So like I said, what I want to say is that he built an empire here. He
Yeah.
started from nothing, and now we're the #1 Chevy store in the market. So
You
one of the top
displaced-
Chevy stores in the New York State. So.
Yeah, and you displaced the previous #1 who held that title for quite some time.
Yeah, sometimes people want to keep the belt warm, but they kept it warm for 20-something years.
Yeah.
But that baby fits nice and snug
I'm
around that
sitting
waist now.
right to my left right now, and I know that's something we talked about early on when I came up here to visit the first time. You gave me, first of all, you were really open with me at that point in time, and it was something that I was, I gravitated towards that right away. And I said, at some point in time with because Tony impressed the hell out of me when we first sat down in his office, then I had the chance to walk the campus with you, and you basically laid out what your plan was to grow this business. You and Tony had talked about it, and you guys have done everything you said you were going to do. That's a rare experience for me. I hear a lot of people talk in this business, but not everybody executes, and you guys do that very, very well.
Yeah, I kind of feel, to be 100% honest with you, that I might have set the bar too low when I was talking to you, because I don't feel like there's a summit.
Right.
I think at that point when I was talking to you, I was like, saying a lot of outlandish things at the time, and I honestly felt like at that time I was like, man, he must think I'm arrogant or I'm crazy.
No, quite the opposite. It's so funny you say that, because quite the opposite. I remember leaving here, calling Richard King and saying, like, I don't think the timing is right now, but I want to be a part of what they're doing in some way, shape, or form moving forward, because I see what he was laying out for me. You articulated it as we walked throughout the building and the campus, and you were pointing stuff out to me, and this is what we're going to do here. And so I was gravitating towards that from the giddy up.
I think that you kind of started that, to be honest with you. When I think back to those days, I remember that we first, we met because we were in need of recruitment, especially on the salesperson front. We've used it in a lot of different areas since then, but at that time, you didn't just say, okay, I can recruit salespeople or I can recruit whatever for you, and this is what it's going to cost you, and let's do business type of thing. It was like, okay, before we even start, I want to come up and meet you in person, and then I think you spent like a full day or maybe even longer than that, where you were asking me all kinds of questions. I was like, I don't even know if this guy wants my business. I think he wants to know what we're going to do. Maybe he wants to work with us. I don't know. Yeah. But we had a couple things that were in common that made me feel comfortable with you. I mean, I don't have those same conversations I had with you with everybody. That would take all my time. But we both are NADA graduates, and that was the first real common ground. And then when you started asking me questions like, what's your culture? Because, you were recruiting for me, and it's easy. I guess there's other recruitment companies out there that probably just want to get you candidates and collect their money.
Right.
But you were asking me questions like, what's your culture now? Do you think it's going to be the same in 7 years or 10 years?
Yeah.
If it's not going to be the same, what do you envision it as being? What are the people? What do you want the people to look like? What do you want them to, do you want college educated people? Do you not? Do you want, so I don't know. I think that we were on the same wavelength there.
We were.
And I felt like
you had clarity.
I was comfortable saying all the goals that I kind of, they may have come across as brash at the time, but I already knew what we were going to do. There was a plan in place. I think a lot of
There's
people
another B word.
don't have a plan in place, so they can't execute the plan. But there was a plan in place. We knew exactly what that was and exactly what we were going to do, but there's still a plan in place. We're not done yet.
No, I know you're not done. You're just getting started,
Yeah.
truthfully. That's how I feel every time I talk to you. And that's the highest praise that I can pay somebody that's in a leadership position the way that you are, is that I always feel like you're just getting started. Like you're just starting to discover what your potential really is over here. That's exciting to people like me, okay? Because I think much the same way, but I use a different B word. I like the word balls. Like you had the balls to actually have those conversations with me, but you also had the brains to back it up. And that's, I think, what delivers the execution piece of it. And we recognized early on that people were a critical component to what you were trying to do. You've been featured. By the way, I have to at least acknowledge you've been featured on Auto Success. All right, the cover of Auto Success. You were recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 in 2014.
Yes, sir.
And these two things are a byproduct of something like this. Can we talk a little bit about that, the Lion?
The Lions Club dinner. The Lions Club dinner is been very lucrative for me because I'm in multiple 20 groups and I won the idea session in both of those 20 groups based on.
You're getting used to doing that, aren't you?
I find great pride in that. But the Lions Club dinner, it was kind of like an idea. Some of the salesmen that you've recruited for me and the guys that you've recruited for me that I've hired on the outside at the same time that you'd had nothing to do with, but I've always talked about rabbits. I feel like you've got your sales floor is like a pace car, so they all move at roughly whatever that pace is. And I always talk about we want to hire people that are going to go out past the pace car.
Right.
So and I refer to those as rabbits. Like I don't want you to get comfortable when you get to the pack and then run with
100%.
them. I want you to go out past them because that's gonna increase the speed of the whole pack. So I kind of I'm very hands-on with salespeople when they're brand new, and I want multiple rabbits, and I want them all to outdo one another because I think that speeds up the whole ship. So what I started hearing is when I got more youthful people, they like recognition just as much as they like what you pay them.
Oh, no question.
So they gave me some of the ideas, so I can't say it was all Paul's idea, and I'm the one that knows what's going on here. It's more like they bring me things, and then I'll put my own spin on it, and they tend to work out. Lions Club was one of them. We decided that we're going to start to take our top producers. We had certain KPIs that we knew when we hit on these type of things, the store does very well. It leads to
drivers of your success.
High gross profit, high net profit, all the recognition and awards that come along with it. So we put that together, and our guys have to hit 4 out of 5 of those key performance indicators on a monthly basis. If they do that, they're invited to come with myself, along with our general sales manager, whoever our top producing finance manager was, and some other key members of the team that may have had highlight months, stellar months. And we go out to dinner. We go to the top places in the market, and we spare no expense. So they like it because
it's an experience.
I was telling you right before we went live here that I tell my wife, I'm like, I didn't know that going out to dinner with me was this fun. But they believe it is. I mean, it's the talk of the town. When we go out, like I said, there's no expense spared, and we go into the nicest places, maybe places that they've never been to before, and it's something that we look forward to every single month. And like I was telling you, when we leave that event, probably shouldn't be saying this, but as I'm driving, I'm getting text message after text message or phone call after phone call saying, Paul, that was awesome. Hope I'm there next month. This is absolutely awesome. That was better than last. That one was better than last month. This might be the nicest.
It's a sign of great leadership, right? Is somebody that is not only driven, because I know you're a driven guy. You are somebody that you don't accept excuses. You have no place in your life for excuses, and I know people are really clear on that. But you're accessible and you're relatable. And I think never more so than when you go out for those dinners, they have a chance to kind of relax, exhale, enjoy the fruits of the labor for the month previous, but they're dealing with a real person.
But that was them. I say this all the time, and this is something that I think some people may be embarrassed to admit. But this is something I talk about, and I talk about it all the time in our sales meetings, which is, I try to let them know I'm not. Someone comes in here new, they're like, oh my God, that's the big boss, right? But they don't know, like I was then. They think like he makes all this money. He comes from the different side of the tracks as me. That's not the truth. Like I came from the same side of the tracks as them. I've had my bank account negative. I used to overdraft my bank account intentionally. I've had my cell phone turned off. I've done all the things that you don't brag about. So I can relate. I also know that if I can do it, anybody can do it. Yeah. So, I can have those one-on-one conversations with them, and they feel comfortable. And I think that they know that they're dealing. They're more than just an employee to me. I feel like I say all the time. People are like, "Paul, you've got 5 kids." I was like, "Yeah, I got a lot more than that. I got a lot of them at."
You got a lot of people counting on you, and that's what I love about you is that you don't shirk that responsibility. And I know that Tony doesn't either. I think that's part of your indoctrination into this organization is that you don't shirk responsibility. You value people, and look, we talk about it on the 6 all the time. You got to be real. Nobody here is born a success. People that have achieved the levels of success that you guys have earned their way there, right? Through being the right kind of person, putting in the effort, putting in the hours, executing, learning from failure, all these things that I think you guys embody. We got to pay the bills here on the 6 every once in a while, so we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to get together with my man, Mr. Paul Lynch, over at DePaula Chevrolet in Albany. All right, guys, so we're back here on the 6 with my man, Mr. Paul Lynch. He is the straw that stirs the drink over here at DePaula on a day-in and day-out basis, partnered with his father-in-law, Mr. Tony DePaula, the founder here at DePaula Chevrolet. And, when we last left off, we were talking about the importance of people. One of the other drivers, I think, of your success over here is your commitment and focus to the used car business. And I go back to our initial conversation. When you walked me around the lot over here, what did we talk about? We talked about used cars.
Talked about used cars. I mean, that was something that when I went through Dealer Academy, it was, your financials are up there. You're in that room with 40 guys that are just as good, if not better than you. Yeah. And there's nowhere to hide.
Humbling sometimes, right?
More than that. And sometimes it could be downright embarrassing in some certain circumstances. But used cars seem like, I really have my chokehold around the variable operation, so the sales departments. And at the time, I think used cars was our biggest weakness. And when we talked about used cars in Dealer Academy, I was like, I wanted to get out of the room. It was like I gotta
time to hit the men's room.
It's time to hit the men's room, or
100%.
I gotta hide under the table and start sucking my thumb or something. Right. We had to bring our inventory schedules in. We had cars that were 600 plus days old, things like that. We had a lot of aged inventory. We had no real plan. There was cars that we couldn't find and things like that. And I was like, I think that those are, some people, including Tony, if he hears this, will probably be pissed that I said those things, but they were probably good things. Yeah. Because those pain points and those embarrassments are things that make you're never going back to those places before.
It's funny you say that, because Tony has really challenged you and pushed you throughout your career, has allowed you to make mistakes, has allowed you to achieve at the very highest levels, and I think that becomes critical in terms of the mentoring role that he plays in providing that opportunity to you, but you also answer the call, which I think is great. You need to have both parties on the same page with respect to that. He's
got a lot of experience, and he's guided me, to say the least. He's guided me. At the same time, I've done a lot of self-education myself, and more than ever. Like I said, I got a bachelor's degree, but I got a bachelor's degree with like a 2.4 GPA, and I graduated in four years, which was a miracle based on my behaviors. But I never was a top producer. I've had several other jobs where I was never trying to execute at the level or pushing for greatness. I would say that here, once I got here and I realized that how much opportunity there was, it's almost like that becomes addicting. It becomes like a passion and a driving force, and then it was more like a you versus you thing. I don't even care about our competition. A lot of times I tell people and customers all the time, they want to say like bad experience here. I always say, I'm not here to talk bad about the competition. I'm only here to talk about what we do and what we do well.
That's $1 million statement. I don't want the audience to get lost on that, because we got a lot of people that watch your show that are looking for some of the hidden clues of success that you leave behind in your wake. And one of the things that you just said was that ultimately for you, your competition is who you were yesterday. Right, and your objective is to improve each and every single day, and you don't get focused on the competition. You focus on how do I improve myself. I'm my own competition. That is, a really big piece of success for a lot of the people that I speak to on the six.
I also think if you get just fixated on your competition, I mean, you really got to be. I believe it's you versus you, or your store versus your store, and market share. You got to be measuring market share, because you could be beating your competition and losing market share. You're losing.
Right.
You're not winning. You think you're winning head to head. I mean,
that's a great point.
That's nonsense.
Well, that's where myopia, right? Getting focused on one thing can be your downfall. We talked about, I'm not going to name the competition, but we talked about some of your competition in this market where you guys kind of went in and robbed the pootie.
Yeah,
when they weren't paying
we
attention.
talk about that. We're open and very confident about that. I believe you have to have a plan, and then you got to be able to execute the plan. You have to hold people accountable and have a strategy and go in there and execute it. Like, it's no surprise that we're the #1 Chevy store in the market. It's not because Paul's got a big ego or Tony's got a big ego or because we're in Albany or because we're on the corner of Central and Everett for X amount of years. It's a philosophy, a work ethic, a culture, and a plan that's executed right down to the fine details. And you're going to have to get up real early in the morning and stay up real late and willing to sacrifice to take that belt away from me. I interview people, and I've actually had my general sales manager right now. When I interviewed him, he's like, "What's the deal with that belt?" So I gave him the story. He's like, "That's my belt." I said, "Okay." And I already knew I was hiring.
He's my guy.
Yeah. So
100%.
talking about them, we knew they had the jewels in the castle. We knew where they were. We knew we were coming in. We knew we were taking them.
And
we were going to have a party afterwards, and that's what we do. And it's 4 years running, and it's going to.
You're like a real live Danny Ocean, man. As you said, Ocean's 11, no question. Go back to used cars for a second, because that has been a big driver for your performance over here. I think it feeds every department, as you know.
Absolutely.
Already.
When I was at Dealer Academy, like I said, that's probably the thing that made us gravitate toward each other. And one of the things I told you off air was that. When Tony decided to send me to Dealer Academy, he had me in his office, and he's like, "We're going to invest in you. We're going to send you here. You're going to learn this. And he's like, you think you're great at everything."
Right.
And I did, most certainly did. But he's like, "You're a baby," and I kind of took that as an insult. I didn't say that to him, all due respect, but I was like.
But it challenged you.
Yeah, it did. And now when I look back, he was 100% right. So, used cars just happened to be something that embarrassed me when I was there. And then Dale Pollock walked in the room. I didn't know who he was or anything about him at that point. And he's walking in, and he gives a presentation, and then somewhere in the presentation, he's walking around the room in small confines, and then they tell us that he's blind, which blew the hair off my head.
Yeah.
And I was just like fixated on him. And then once I started to realize, like, everything that I knew in the car business was more like slick talking and moving and grooving and being a closer and things like that, and this was more analytical, and this was more up my alley. I was good at the other stuff, but I like transparency. I like to close with third-party validation, facts, and things like that. So once I got V-Auto in my mind, it was like an addiction that was stronger than anything that I've ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Pollock as well, and I think his ability to get you focused on asset management and marketing a vehicle to your market more effectively versus what we got myopically focused on with used cars was we were used to making a particular gross profit.
Right.
And I still walk into dealerships today. Well, I'll say, what is your pricing philosophy and strategy? How do you execute on the pricing side? And they'll say, "Oh, we mark up every used car $4,000 and then come down from there." And I go like, "Oh my God, man, you're missing the whole point." And I think Pollock did a great job in highlighting how to manage your assets more effectively and what were the really smart things to do on a day in and day out basis as you manage your inventory.
I think there's still a lot of dealers that think the same thing, like it's all about gross profit per unit, and they could be doing a great job. No disrespect intended to them, but I just say that if you did it a different way, you would be doing
get a better net result.
Yeah,
100% better net result.
So when we talked, I think we were doing like 50 or 60 used cars, and I said, we're going to do 100, we're going to do 150, we're going to do. Yeah. When I got this award in 14, they interviewed me for Automotive News, and I said we're going to do 250 by 2017, and that's what we did. Last year in 2018, we averaged 224 used a month.
Yep.
And really, the only thing that stops us from doing more is just facility and size and throughput. Right. Getting enough technicians, getting enough capacity in our shop, and things like that. It's selling the cars is as easy. It's more like acquiring them, acquisition, and managing them through the reconditioning process is where we've right now been stuck at that like 220, 224 number.
Yeah, but see, I'm betting on you guys because you guys figure out a way to break through success and production inhibitors. Like you figure out the answers, and that a lot of times what I see in the dealership world is they'll hit that brick wall, and instead of just kind of wiping away the blood and figuring out a way to get over it, around it, through it, they stop. And they go, well, I guess that's as much as we can do, and you guys are not limited by that. But that has a lot to do with your 6-inch space upstairs.
I think that's training. I think that one thing that lacks nationwide in the automotive industry is just training. And if guys that are doing the training, I think it's a lot of upper level guys, and then it doesn't really get down to other levels. I believe that, if you, instead of just telling people this is what you do or this is what we want you to do, if you tell them why you want them to do that and explain to them the philosophy and what the reasoning is, rather than just like you're going to do this or you're going to do this, and if you don't, they just think that it's bad if you don't, it's good if you do. But why are we doing it? They have to know it and believe in it. So one of the things with Pollock is for years, any manager that becomes a manager in our organization, they have to read the Dale Pollock books. I believe he's got 4 books at this point. I still chastise him a little bit, saying that I should be in one of those books, but I think that number 5, maybe I'll get my.
If you're watching Dale Pollock, he's worthy of a mention for sure. No doubt. We're going to take another quick break here on the 6 because we got to pay the bills, as they say. But when we come back, I want to talk about what you just said with respect to training. I think the cognitive approach to training is what's missing these days. A lot of times we want it to be rote, and it's just they continue to do the same thing like robots over and over again. But we want them thinking through it. So we'll be back on the 6 in just a second with my man, Mr. Paul Lynch. He is over at the Polish Chevrolet in Albany.